Welcome to Doc Talk Live. I'm with John Gugel.
Doctor, good to see you.
Good to see
you
you
this morning.
So this show today is really for my tennis friends and my tennis enemies. So part of me hates to provide this information to the people that I may be playing.
We'll be easy on them, okay?
So I've been sort of messing with this topic for a long time as an aging tennis player, and somebody who does a little bit of sports medicine, and I remember being at a conference a couple years ago, and some sports medicine doctors who represent colleges, who are the chief doctors of colleges. So they see everything: football players, lacrosse players, soccer players, and tennis players. They were talking about a wrist injury in a college athlete with tennis. And they were talking about the ultrasound findings and doing regenerative treatments, and nothing was working. And I was just sitting there thinking, and I was like, I wonder what kind of racket this guy plays with. And I wonder what kind of string this guy uses. And I casually asked the doctor, and he says, I don't know. And it bothered me, because if a runner came with a running injury with their foot, commonly they would bring in their shoes. They would bring in their equipment. And so I've been interested in equipment in terms of injury. And admittedly, I know less than I want to know. But I want to pick your brain today so that, and make it as user-friendly as possible.
Right, absolutely.
So I'm talking arm injuries. I'm talking overuse injuries from hitting a tennis ball. I've had them all. Tennis elbow, golfer's elbow, which is medial epicondylitis, lateral epicondylitis. I've had rotator. I've had them all. Yeah. And I think that, of course, it's important to get your technique right, but the equipment has got to be huge. Yeah. And so the things I think about with equipment are strings, tension, and racket, grip, dampeners. Those are the main things. Of all those things, what would you say is the most important thing to focus on? If you were going to tweak one thing about a racket for somebody with arm injuries, what would be the first thing you would work on?
String.
The string itself?
String.
Not the tension of the string, but the type of string itself.
Yeah, right. Tension is a misnomer that we talk about all the time. We talk about tension, but what we're really interested in is the string bed stiffness, the entire string bed. One little string doesn't care what you do with it, but the entire string bed is what's giving you back that force. It's also what is creating the shock that's associated with the hit. Okay, so we want to talk about the entire thing. I have a database I started taking back in the late 1980s of string. Every time I get a string in here, I check the elongation, and I apply a power potential to that. The higher that power potential is, the more it's going to give, retract, and store that energy and give it back to you. In other words, you don't have to swing quite so hard to get the ball to go where you want it to go. And those range from 16% at 60 pounds down to...
Okay, we got to make it even simpler.
Okay.
Even simpler. Okay. There are different...
Natural gut.
Natural gut.
That's
gut. The best. That's the best, most arm-friendly strength.
That's the first cycle that you do. You get rid of whatever you've got in there, totally, and go with natural gut.
Okay, and why natural gut?
The elasticity of natural gut, the dynamics of natural gut is unique. No one's been able to duplicate it yet. It comes from a cow, and as we know, not cats, but it comes from cows, and is very, very, very elastic. Okay, it goes in, out, all day long. Okay, it's very stable. In other words, it does not lose tension nearly as quickly. But when you hit the ball with natural gut, it collapses, captures the ball, and then it gives back the energy. So it's absorbing the incoming.
What is the worst string for your arm?
Well, I'm going to use a general term, that's polyester, but the worst string is something that's incredibly stiff in tension, okay? The polyester is probably the worst now.
What's an example of a polyester string that is
polyester.
commonly used?
Luxolon.
Luxolon.
Luxolon is one of the best companies making string, period.
So, Luxolon string is bad for the arm. Why do people use it?
It portends durability. In other words, they think it's going to last longer. Performance-wise, it'll be in the racket longer, but it's not performing up to spec as long as it should. That's why pro players that are using polyester change rackets every 9, 10, 11 games, okay, because the tension is gone. It no longer does what they want it to do. With a recreational player, they typically don't do that. They can't take their rackets back and have them strung every 9 or 10 games.
Right.
Okay? So they continue to play with it, okay? But it doesn't break as nearly as likely as a multi-filament or natural gut. Yeah.
So it lasts longer, doesn't break, plays really good in the beginning, but then what happens over time?
Well, about 3 or 4 hours of good hitting, it's going to have lost a lot of its elasticity, if there is any such thing in polyester, because if you pull polyester and it just barely moves, okay, on the stringing machine.
Okay.
So you're not getting a lot of elastic tension in the string. You're getting stiffness because the string is stiff. Okay. So
why do you want stiffness?
People want stiffness because it mitigates the power. In other words, the pro player out there wants to hit the ball really about as hard as they can if they have the opportunity. Okay. And to get it to go as far as you need it to go, you have to really swing hard.
So they're getting control because they can swing as hard as they want, not have to worry about it going out.
Yeah. I mean, it's not going to give me any more control than I already have. You know, you have to have that skill. You know, you have to have that skill set of putting the ball pretty much where you want it, but they don't have to worry about slowing down their speed.
So the problem with natural gut, though, is it's very expensive.
It's expensive and it's powerful. It's expensive, yeah, it's expensive.
So what is the alternative if you can't afford gut? I mean, how much is natural gut? Just the string itself for a racket?
$40.
$40, right? And most strings, a set of string is between $5 and $20.
Correct.
So what's an alternative to natural gut?
Well, for several years, many years, in fact, polyether ether ketone is a material that's been used in strings.
I'm going to Google that. Polyether ether ketone. Come on.
Peak. It's used. Yeah, it's very, very high elasticity.
All right, give us a brand. Who made
Ashaway, Monogut ZX and ZX Pro?
Ashaway,
made in Rhode Island.
Okay.
Yeah.
And they make squash string too.
Correct. Oh yeah, one of the best in squash string.
Yeah. So I use their squash string.
Exactly.
What's another example of that string? Does Babylon make that string?
No, they don't. The reason it's very expensive to process it is very expensive relative to any other string. Polyester, as you know, I mean, once you get the recipe down, and they spend money in research and development. Once you get the recipe down, turn that extruder on, that stuff flies out of there. Okay. With natural gut and peak, it's a different story. It's a little slower process. It costs a little bit more money. Okay. Peak is I use probably more peak for juniors than any other string here.
Okay.
Because of it, and that's why.
So you're recommending monogut.
Monogut ZX or ZX Pro.
ZX Pro
being the thinner
and
version.
a lot of people string with hybrid techniques. What does that do?
It can do a couple of things. If you have 100% polyester, putting a multi-filament or softer string in the cross strings is going to add some restoring force to the poly. The poly gets very soggy, but the natural gut and the multi-filaments will give that some restoring force and pull it back in. It's going to feel better. But in terms of initial strokes and impact, it's not going to feel a whole lot different. Okay, it's going to play better longer, but it's not going to feel a lot different. If you put the natural gut in the main string and the polyester in the cross string, now you've got the main string doing most of the work because it's going up and down as you stroke the ball, get it to rotate. Okay, and the main string's not going to last as long. So you've sort of eliminated the benefit of that long durability that people think they're getting with polyester by doing that. So typically you end up with polyester in the main strings,
right,
and whatever else
the gut, or
in the cross strings typically.
right.
Yeah.
A lot of times I use what's called a Babolat addiction in my
Correct.
crosses.
Yeah, addiction is a multi-filament string, good string. Yeah.
A multi-filament. It's a nylon, right?
It's basically nylon. Yeah.
It's a nylon, but
With
it's
a
an
lot-
arm-friendly string. What about tension? Will stringing your rackets significantly looser help your arm?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
There's a-
yes, go low on the tension.
Low on the tension. Right now, with some of the pro players, they're 38 to 40 pounds. That's a reference tension. Okay, that machine is going to produce a different result than this machine at 40 pounds. So you need to know what you're
Sure.
dealing with. It. You need to know who
Right.
your racket technician is and say, this is what I want. And lower tensions are certainly better. And every string job we do what I call a linearity plot, which shows me where the string gets stiffer. The harder you hit it, it gets stiffer. And you want the line to be sort of linear. You don't want it to go whoop like this. It will come back down, but that's what people don't understand in terms of string bed stiffness.
Yeah, I'm not sure I'll ever understand. That's really complex for me.
No, but you talk to your racket technician.
Okay.
You say, okay, here's what I want to deal with.
I don't think we talk to our racket technicians
Well,
much,
you should.
John.
You should.
I'm not saying we shouldn't. I'm just saying I don't think that's something we do.
Yeah, but you should. I think they'd be happy to talk to you about it. They may not know as much as you would like for them to know, but it will convince them they need to learn a little bit more. Because you're in charge, and this is one of the things about racket technicians that I've known for years. I've been doing this for a long time, is that we don't get the consumer involved to the extent we should. That's
Right.
why I do. That's really what I do. I communicate with the consumer, and I do exactly what he wants me to do, and I'll give some input.
Right, and this stuff is so important. I mean, this is really what's going through your arm,
Yeah,
right? It's going through your arm.
And it's going through your arm, and it hurts. And if you can't play tennis, the racket companies aren't going to sell as many rackets. The ball companies aren't going to sell as many rackets. There's balls, the strings. So the whole market goes
down. What about dampeners? Do they really do anything?
Dampers damp the vibration, the high frequency vibration of the string. Okay, they don't do anything to mitigate the shock of the impact, but they do eliminate that high pitched ping. Some people don't like. I like them. I like to hit the ball with the damper, but it doesn't do anything.
Does it feel better for your arm? Does it help your arm?
The high frequency vibrations that you're feeling are good, and that's I'm getting off the track a little bit. But some of the better players want to get as much feedback as they can into their hand.
Okay.
It's high frequency, and so it's not like a shock. It's just a high frequency vibration coming through. So they don't want to use dampers. Some of them do because of sound, but it doesn't do anything in terms of helping.
Because sometimes I put extra dampeners in.
Yeah.
It's not legal, but sometimes I put extra dampeners.
A lot of people do because they want to touch every single string. But in reality, if you have one little damper, it touches one string. It's actually touching them all because they're all interwoven.
But does it help the arm?
No.
So it's just all up in here.
Yeah,
it's all up in here.
But it sounds good, and it doesn't feel bad. It doesn't hurt you.
Okay.
You know, but it doesn't do much.
All right, so let's just review with the string. String, you want a monogut, an Ashaway monogut, or a gut string, or then the next choice would be a
good multi-filament like your addiction.
A good multi-filament. You kind of want to avoid the Luxilon type of string because it's too stiff.
It's very stiff.
It is durable.
It's durable. Let me say this. In my opinion, there's no such thing as a really bad string. They're just really horrible applications. Okay? I mean, because, Luxilon, we're not picking on Luxilon as a brand necessarily, but that's the brand right now.
Yeah,
okay,
well,
so
it's a durable, playable string.
Yeah, no question about it. No question about it. So, but they're just bad applications.
We're just talking about my arm, though.
Yeah.
And then string it as loose as possible, which is really, I struggle with the tension, because the tighter I string it, the more control I seem to have. And then, so now let's move on to the racket.
Sure.
Okay, how do you pick an arm-friendly racket?
Weight. You pick the heaviest racket you think you can get by with, and that's where you have to communicate a little bit. Weight is your friend when it comes to tennis rackets. Okay? That mass absorbs a lot of the incoming shock. Okay, it sort of settles it down before it gets to your body. Okay, and with the greater mass, you can take a slower, more controlled swing and get the ball to go just as deep. Okay, so you're not whipping at it, not flipping at it, and not causing sort of rotational problems with your wrist. Let that racket do the work. Keep that firm. Just let the racket go right through the ball, and you'd be surprised. The single most important thing that happens to a person when they want to get better, they come in and say, "What do I need to do?" We put some weight on the racket. It could go any number of places, and they always are. It's always a benefit. Okay. Now, when we talk about weight, we're not talking about ounces. We're talking about grams. We're talking about a little bit of weight. Put it at the hoop to give you more inertia, better swing weight, and more stability. Or put it at the rear end, which doesn't affect inertia at all, but increases the overall weight of the racket. Okay, and the higher the weight, typically at the back end, the better the recoil weight is. In other words, if you serve and volley, or the recoil weight is, if you serve and volley, you're not moving your racket very much. Okay, so any shot you're hitting or you're not moving the racket very much, that weight gives you stability. And if it's down here, it counteracts that.
So you want to add weight to more the handle of the racket.
Absolutely.
And seems like the weight of rackets over the last 30 years has just gone down, gone down, gone down.
Correct. Yeah.
And I actually like swinging a light racket. It feels better, but it's probably long term worse for my arm.
It's not helping your arm at all. I used to make tennis rackets, and we made a racket to show. It was 7 ounces, and we took it with us when we were showing our other rackets and asked people to hit with it. You can't get the ball back to the net. There's just nothing there.
Right.
Boom, just nothing happens. So people began to realize, that weight is sort of your friend. But you're right. Weights have gone down.
Like, okay, Prince Graphite, just the traditional Prince Graphite, what does that weigh?
360 grams.
Okay, and so let's just pick up a racket here. This is a Wilson, what is this?
It's a Pro Staff.
A Wilson Pro Staff. This is a new racket. What does this weigh?
That weighs probably 315.
That has some lead on it, doesn't it?
316.
Okay, and what did the graphite weigh?
360.
360. Is that a big drop in weight?
Huge. But along with that comes the stiffness component.
Okay, so tell us about stiffness of the racket.
Well,
so the more stiff it is, the worse it is for your arm.
Correct. Stiffness is measured a number of different ways. That seems to be the standard of the industry. And it bends the racket in such a way that you get the tip moving down, and you can see how.
That's you. That's all right.
Yeah. So, but yeah, the stiffness of the racket. Typically, what happens? The stiffer the racket, the more powerful it is.
Okay.
So when people migrate to stiffer rackets, that's what they're looking for. They're looking for power. Okay. But you can do that with a not so stiff racket by decreasing the string bed stiffness with the right string.
Oh wait. Let's back up. The stiffer the racket, the more power.
Yeah.
And why is that?
Well, there's not as much lost energy.
Gotcha.
When that ball hits that racket, the racket's bending and everything else. It's not giving that ball back much juice.
So the more flexible the racket is, the less power.
Typically, the less power.
It's absorbing some of the energy.
It's absorbing some of the energy.
Why is that better for your arm?
Well, because that energy is being absorbed by the racket and
not your arm. Okay.
A good example is the new Wilson. Well, you're playing with the Clash.
Yes, I switched to the Clash.
Yeah.
It's a very arm-friendly racket.
Very, very arm-friendly racket. And if anybody comes in and says, I have arthritis, I have a systemic problem, not just a poor stroke, then that would be where to go, because that's never going to get any stiffer. Okay. And then you can do whatever you want to with the strings to get it right where you want it.
Got it.
Okay.
Just put us in the shot a little bit more. Maybe turn that a little bit. There we go.
Right,
so if there's any questions, now's a good time to ask. How do people find you? Let's say on the internet. It's www.racketquest.com, and so people can consult you here, there, and everywhere.
Yeah.
You've been doing this for what, 40 years?
40 years, yeah.
Okay. And I'm sure you've worked with lots of tennis players over the years, and just on these racket technologies.
Correct.
How did you get into this? How did you I want to be a professional racket, custom racket designer? How does one find this niche?
I was in school many years ago, and I had the opportunity to design a tennis racket, and I did. I designed it, and I thought this is going to be awesome. It was a one-piece injection molded structural foam tennis racket.
Mm-hmm.
There's a couple hanging right back there, way in the back.
Okay.
So I got I actually had it molded in Germany. Came back, and I started to string them because I had devised this great stringing pattern. 8 hours later, and I hadn't even gotten the thing strung. And I thought, this is not working. Okay, so I sat down and I tried to design something that would be beneficial to the tennis player and the guy trying to put the string in it. And that's what got me started in this thing. So I've been doing that since 1970. And
Have you seen the two-handled racket before?
Oh, sure, yeah. Oh, yeah. That's been around for a good while.
Yeah.
There's some people that really like it.
Yeah.
Or not, two or three.
Yeah, my nemesis plays with that racket.
Yeah, I know, yeah. Some people do. And then they handle it very well. They handle it very well. So conceptually, it's not a bad idea, but in reality, it doesn't do much for a lot of people.
Right.
They want to pick up a racket. That's what I learned when I first did the first racket. Was there were still wooden rackets being made. That's how long it's been. So people want a racket that look like a tennis racket.
Yes.
They simply do. And the Prince graphite began to be more round. If you look at the Clash, it's more round. And what that does is sort of match up the main string length with the cross string length. Gives you a much more powerful bed, if you will. And that's why they're able to get some power out of that racket that's incredibly soft. The first racket I did, matter of fact, has the same stiffness as the Clash.
Interesting.
So anyway.
All right. Well, I appreciate you taking the time to break this down. Have we covered everything? I mean, the main things.
Yes.
Like if you were going to just tell our viewers, I mean, they'll maybe put this back up and fast forward or whatever, but if they're having arm problems, just summarize the things they need to do with their racket.
Natural gut string for 1 or 2 cycles. Okay. Weight. And if you think about weight, I don't want to do that. Well, you can take it off. Okay. If you have a racket technician that can do it for you, you put the weight where it can be removed. Okay. And you try it, and you get to something that is just absolutely perfect for you. I've got a 12-year-old girl, a very, very good player, that's swinging a 345-gram swing weight. Big. Okay, so don't tell the doctor that you can't handle it. Okay, you can handle it.
Okay.
You can handle it. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Weight and natural gut.
Okay. And I guess go down on the tension too.
It depends on what string you're using. With natural gut, you can stay up.
You
a
can
little
stay
bit.
up on it.
Absolutely, yeah.
All right. Well, I'm gonna get you to string some of my rackets so I can get out there and try these things.
Yeah,
All right. I appreciate it, and I'm gonna
bet.
call it there. Appreciate y'all watching. If you have any questions, just whatever, type them in, and hopefully I can forward them to John. Thank y'all.
Yeah, thank you.
So I'll hit finish.